Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. It is your host, Brice Lewis, back again for a final time here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast. This will be my last podcast before I depart from GSMC, but I won't let that hinder what is going to be another good show today. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being part of this experience. We have a jam-packed show for you today. We have talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. What's happened to the Pelicans? A team that you look like on paper and say, oh, playoff team, they're going to be a surprise team, are now one of the worst teams in all of the Western Conference. We're going to talk about some players potentially making on the move, some trades potentially happening. I'm also going to talk about Houston. Houston, they're currently on a winning streak right now. Could they potentially still make the playoffs without James Harden? So we're going to discuss all that today on the podcast. Like I said, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And whatever platform or stream you're listening to us on, please don't forget to leave a review, subscribe. We definitely appreciate it here at GSMC. And so we're going to get into one of the biggest NBA disappointments of the season so far, the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans were a team coming into this season who a lot of people looked at as a trendy pick for not necessarily a surprise team, but a team that, missed the playoffs by a few games last year. And you said, okay, Zion's playing more minutes. Brandon Ingram's an all-star. Lonzo is improving. JJ Redick's a great shooter. They brought in Steven Adams. They hired Stan Van Gundy. You look at all of it and you think, oh, wow, this team definitely could be in the top 10 at least in the West. And so far, they have been one of the biggest disappointments. They're not even in the top 10 right now. They're currently 13th in the Western Conference. That's terrible. They're 4-15 this year. That's also terrible. They have struggled tremendously. Actually. No, I was correct. Yeah, so they've struggled tremendously. And listen, with the top 10 thing, with the Western Conference, they can still get in. They can still have a chance. But I just think it's shocking how they've played. It's shocking how they've came out this season. You would never think a team with the Pelicans, you have a budding superstar in Zion Williamson. Everybody knows the Zion Williamson hype train. Everybody looked at Zion Williamson as the next big thing. He's been having a great year. It's not even like he's been having a bad year. And then Brandon Ingram's still playing really well. And you're just thinking, well, why is this team struggling so much? Well, first, defense. And actually, I was incorrect. They were sitting 14th in the Western Conference. But first, defense. Their defense ranks 25th in points allowed per possession. So clearly, that was their biggest issue last year, defense. Usually with young teams, defense is an issue. They brought in a guy like Steven Adams to help improve the interior. Zion playing more. Zion, as far as we know, he's never been known as a bad defender, but he's not known as an elite defender, but you would still think he's on the floor more. He's a good defender. Brandon Ingram has the ability to be a good defender. A little bit smaller, a little bit skinnier, but still a good defender. And Lonzo is known as a good on-ball defender. So you think realistically, defensively, they're not that bad. But they are. They're ranked 25th in points. And with that situation, we've heard rumors, especially from Shams Charania of The Athletic, that both Lonzo Ball and JJ Redick are both gettable. They're open to taking trade offers for both players. And, we discussed potentially Lonzo Ball last show, potentially going to 3 teams who could be interested. Now JJ Redick, if you're a team who needs a sharp shooter like JJ, he'll garner plenty of interest if you're the Pelicans. And it's just crazy. But one thing we have to look at with this team is honestly On paper, they look good, but when you actually look at it, I can point out one big issue. Zion Williamson, if you think about Zion Williamson's game, he doesn't have much of a jump shot, even though he can shoot a couple of outside shots. He is mainly in the paint type of player. In today's NBA, which is all about spreading the floor, having shooters, the Pelicans really don't have a lot of great shooters. Outside of JJ, Ingram can hit from outside a bit. Lonzo, has kind of improved, but still not really a great. They don't have a lot of guys that you have to worry about at the three-point line. And then you got Steven Adams. Now, Steven Adams is good from a rebounding perspective, like I said, post-defender perspective, a hard-nosed guy who's going to do all the dirty work. But if you think about it realistically, Zion is a player who needs the paint to be freed up. And now listen, Zion's still second in the league behind Giannis in points scored in the paint. But it still feels like Zion still hasn't been able to fully maximize his play in the paint because of Steven Adams. And I think that's also kind of hurt in that situation. Plus, again, the Pelicans not having a great group of shooters around him. So that can affect, because listen, you have to build around your superstars. Your best players are Brandon Ingram, who can play inside and out. But Zion, if he's going to be your star, and you know his game is inside, you have to build a team that goes that goes outside. In terms of, we're going to have shooters, and then Zion can do his work in the paint. So that's going to be the big thing. And don't forget, they also gave Steven Adams an extension, so they were clearly thinking, this was going to work. You could even say when they had a guy like a Derrick Favors, it worked better because Derrick Favors can at least kind of stretch the floor from the mid-range a bit, still give more space for Zion. But it's hard. And then also think about this too. If you're thinking about improving the roster in terms of maybe off-season with the Pelicans, depending on how the season goes, it's not like New Orleans is a hot free agent start either. So it's not like they can just build easily. And then also, the Eric Bledsoe, Lonzo Ball experiment hasn't really worked. Some people thought maybe that would be a good backcourt potentially, and it hasn't worked out. They actually have not been that great. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where they're not great at shooting threes. They're not great at defense. They're not great at efficiency. And there's just, the roster really doesn't fit too much. And so the Pelicans right now, I think, have an identity crisis. Did they make the right picks with this team? That would be one of the biggest things to look at. And so, if you look at this Pelicans team, like I said, they've disappointed a lot of people that thought they were going to be better so far this season. I think, first thing, if I was the Pelicans, what I would do is I would trade Eric Bledsoe. I don't think the Lonzo Bledsoe experiment works. Lonzo is a guy, to me, if you kept him, he's not a dangerous threat from three. He's more of a facilitator, more of a guy who will set other people up and then occasionally can get his shot, has some athleticism here and there. So you definitely need a guy who is kind of dynamic in his backcourt, who is a scorer, where that way Lonzo doesn't feel that pressure to score, but also could get easier opportunities because of the fact that, hey, there's another guy you have to worry about. He's a threat, from the three-point line and in the paint. And let Lonzo's role be simplified. Because I think also with a team that's young like the Pelicans, one thing you want to try to do is simplify what you want them to do. You don't want to say we need to do this, this, and this, or bring in players that can hurt another person's ability to be effective on the floor. And I think that's big. Because my thing is this. If they trade Lonzo, it's not like you're going to get a ton back for him. Because Lonzo's not this budding superstar. He's a guy who was a second overall pick, depending on how you view it. Maybe he hasn't lived up to his expectations. Remember, it took Brandon Ingram a few years to live up to his expectations as being a top 3 pick. So it's not like it's impossible, but I feel like Lonzo hasn't reached that level yet. That's why I said when we talked about Lonzo, I think him going to like a Clippers team would be great. Because his role would be simplified. Dictate the offense, set up the offense, get the ball to Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, other guys, and then when you have opportunities, take your shots. And I think Lonzo would thrive in that role. But in a role where you need him to be kind of a scorer and a facilitator and this and that, I think that kind of, and then you may not have the best team around him to do that. I think that can affect his play and that can affect his game. And so, to me, that's why I kind of get why the Pelicans are in the situation they are in. But it just, like I said, it's like you can have talent, and I think the Pelicans are a prime example. You can have talent, but it doesn't always mean that the talent works. And I think that's what you're seeing in this situation. You have talent, but it don't mean the talent works. And so they're going to have to really make some decisions. Now, I think what was one of the biggest issues when Zion came back last year? Can him and Brandon Ingram work? It kind of looks like that works. It's more about the other surrounding pieces in the bench that they're going to have to change and fix to really get this team going. You listen, it's still early in the season. They can change things. Like I said, depending on who they trade for, they can maybe rechange this team, reflip this team. You see the Nets currently revamping their entire roster right now with the big 3. So, you have that going. So you can do it. It's just, do they have the players to get what they want back in return? And then on top of that, like I said, people are going to question, was Stan Van Gundy was the right coach? Why did they get Steven Adams and sign him to that extension? All those things are going to be questions with the Pelicans. Because they started the year promising, and then it seemed like they just fell apart. Last year, remember, the Pelicans would lead in a lot of games, but they just couldn't hold leads. Now they're they're playing like they are legitimately one of the worst teams in the league. And that's just something you wouldn't have expected with a Zion. That's why you can even say some of Zion's hype has died down, because when you're a guy like that, like a Zion Williamson with that kind of hype, the Pelicans are getting primetime games because of Zion Williamson. You're expecting the Pelicans to be a better team. Because if you don't, the NBA is going to be like, yeah, Zion is there, but they're losing. And we have to weigh him and then losing. And that can be risky sometimes. And so the Pelicans, like I said, have to make a lot of changes to this team. They have to improve defensively. They have to improve three-point shooting. They have to improve efficiency. They need a better bench. They need better players, I think, around their 2 core players. I think there's a lot of things that need to be done here with this team. It's just a matter of, can David Griffin fix this situation? Or is it going to be a lost season for the Pelicans, and then maybe next offseason you got to make some tough decisions? I feel like the fact that they're willing to listen to offers, clearly if they make these trades, like I said, I don't know if they're going to get a lot back, but depending on how they make these trades, they might legitimately throw in the towel for this season and say, you know what, it's just not good enough, and we're just going to have to revamp things this offseason and see how things go. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Pelicans progress throughout the season. Maybe, you never know. They go on a 5-6 game winning streak, now they're back in it. But we'll have to see what happens with the Pelicans, because we're going to keep, as you keep an eye on them the rest of this regular season. But that's all the time we have here for this segment. Coming up next, we're going to get into some more basketball discussion. So stay tuned right here in the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about what's wrong with the New Orleans Pelicans, a team that people thought coming into the season was going to be one of the better teams in the Western Conference. Now is sitting at 14th in the conference, one spot before the worst team in the Western Conference. And it just has just not been the start of the season has not been good to them. They have struggled. They can't defend. They can't shoot threes. The roster doesn't fit. They're not playing good enough defense. It's just there's so many issues you can say with this team. Lonzo and JJ Redick are on the trade block. People say everybody should be on the trade block except Lonzo. I mean, not Lonzo, but except Zion and Brandon Ingram. I mean, it just seems like, dude, the ship is going down in Pelican Town, and it's just disappointing, especially coming off that loss the Saints just had. Now your basketball team's doing really bad. LSU had a bad year. It just seems like it's going to be a down year for Louisiana and Sporting, but it's just kind of crazy to me how this is working the way it is. But we're gonna have to keep an eye out and see how things go moving forward with the Pelicans. But now we get into the next discussional topic, the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets have won 4 straight ever since James Harden, ever since, they lost a couple of games when James Harden was traded. I believe they're 5-3 or 2 now without James Harden. And, John Wall played well. He just played against his former team, Washington. He said before and after the game, it was personal for him. They gave up on me. And now you could tell that still bothers John to this day that they gave up on him. They said that we just think you're not going to be good enough, or we don't think you can be the John Wall we thought before. And he came out there and had a great game, played well in the fourth quarter. Also got to give love to Demarcus Cousins. People forget, since it's been a few years now, Demarcus Cousins was literally the best center in all of the NBA. Could shoot. He was averaging literally 25 a night and like 12, 13 rebounds. Demarcus Cousins really was that guy in Sacramento. People forget that because of all the injuries. He really was that good. And he's looking like he's getting his legs back under him. He's playing really well. He had a double-double. Then Christian Wood. He has been an unsung hero for the Houston Rockets this season. A guy who looked like he had potential, played in Detroit, whatever. He's played extremely well, can shoot the three, can rebound, can block shots, athletic. This is why a lot of people, even though he really never played before as much as he's played this season, people always said, you look at his game, man, he looks like he could be one of the best big men in the game. And he's kind of showing that now. He's definitely showing that he has the potential to be a star big man for the Houston Rockets. And then on Houston, you still got Eric Gordon. We know Eric Gordon, a veteran. A guy who, remember, used to be a top pick. People thought that he could be a superstar in the league. It never reached those expectations, but he's always been a really good player and a scorer. You got P.J. Tucker. P.J. Tucker's Mr. Do-It-All, a rough rider. Defends you, shoots the three. Remember last year he had the best percentage from the corner and from three. You got Steven Silas in this new system. I mean, overall, this Houston team is not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. This is a good this Houston team to me, and I know a lot of people may not see this like I do. But Houston, to me, could be a playoff team. I think they can get into the top 10 and be a playoff team. That's just my honest opinion. And so, for me overall, I think, seeing that, knowing that, it's not that I have high expectations for Houston, but I do see them being better than what people thought. Because I know some people who thought, no James Harden, they're tanking, they should blow up the season. Last year, if John Wall and Demarcus Cousins can play great, Christian Wood's good, great. But you're not going to do that much. I mean, you've heard PJ Tucker in trade talks. You've heard Eric Gordon in trade talks. You've heard a lot of different things in trade talks. And so there's been a lot of discussion about just how good can Houston be. And so for me, I look at Houston, I say to myself, well, I think they could be one of the better teams in the NBA. Not like top 4, but I think they can get into the playoffs. I think of John Wall, Boogie Cousins play very well and can be what they used to be. And like I said, we may never get the full Demarcus Cousins like we used to. But if he can still be a guy who can score the ball and rebound, he can still be very effective in this league. John Wall, if he could be John Wall that we knew back in Washington, he could be very effective in this league. Christian Wood seems really good. Eric Gordon, I think this team can be pretty decent. And so, since they're playing better as a team, I think this is growing their confidence, and they're continuing to get better. And then we can't forget about Victor Oladipo. I think even though a lot of people are expecting Victor Oladipo to be traded again, he's played very well with Houston as well, and I think he's fit with what they're trying to do in what they're trying to do in Houston. And speaking of Victor Oladipo, let's not forget. I know Victor Oladipo said that when he was traded, he had no warning that he was going to get traded. Remember the offseason? We heard a bunch of Victor Oladipo trading rumors. He's going to be traded. They want to trade him. They want to get rid of him. They want to move on. He wants to move on. And then he came into the season, and I think Victor Oladipo, he's a soldier. He's a guy who just handles his business and lets everything off the court handle itself. He was just playing. And then next thing you know, he's traded. And it's not like, oh, I'm unhappy I'm traded, but it's just kind of like, dang. I think he was thinking he was going to get a heads up that he was about to get traded. He was going to get a heads up. And the fact that he didn't get a heads up maybe kind of made him feel like, well, dang, I didn't get a heads up. And so I think when that happened, or when that does happen, I think that overall, it does catch you off guard. You hear players all the time talk about they were caught off guard by a trade. They were caught off guard by that because they were sitting here thinking, I'm playing here. I'm going to do my thing. Because usually sometimes with players, you're able to know, oh, I could be on the trading block, or they'll let you know, hey, we are shopping you. So it's like, hey, I may not play another game with this team tomorrow. I could be traded tomorrow. Where it sounded like with Victor Oladipo, he looked at it like, well, I'm playing, and as far as I know, I'm going to be here until told otherwise, and then they just traded him. And they're just like, oh, I'm playing on a new team now. Great. So I think that was a little, different for him, but I think Houston could be a playoff team, for sure. And then let me talk about another team in the Western Conference who has actually exceeded expectations by far. The Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz are currently the third seed in the Western Conference. They have one of their tied for the second best record with the Clippers. They have played unbelievable this year. Donovan Mitchell has played very, very well. Hopefully he'll be okay. He's currently in concussion protocol right now, but he's played very well. Rudy Gobert, we know what he is. Listen. I was one of the few people who said I don't really agree with them giving him a $200 million contract for what he does. But he is a defensive anchor. He is a defensive of the year player candidate too. And, listen, he get you double-double a game. But like I told you before, I think Mike Conley really getting his rhythm this year, finding his offensive stroke, and then Jordan Clarkson being one of the best 6 men, if not the best 6 men off the floor. They have 3 guys that feel like who can score the ball. Then they have shooters, Joe Ingles. He's been around for a while. He can have his moments. NATO, other guys like that who can shoot the ball, shoot from distance. They kind of are a team that, if you look at the way they're constructed, they are a very complete team. Now, I could understand we may sit here and think Donovan Mitchell isn't a top-end enough star to be a legitimate team in the Western Conference. But he is definitely a guy who will have those performances that make you say, hey, why can't he be? And so when you look at the team, they look super impressive. They look really good. And if this keeps up, they could, like I said, be a top 3 team in the West. Because remember what I told you. That third team in the West is up for grabs. We don't know who the third team in the West is. And right now, the Jazz are taking that and saying we're the third best team in the West. Now, I expect them to eventually get into the 2 seed because, obviously we don't know how long Paul George and Kawhi is going to be out with the Clippers. So I expect them to be battling with the Clippers. But if they continue at this rate and at the success with winning, I think we have to legitimately sit here and say, hey, the Jazz are a team to be reckoned with. They're a team to really, sit there and be like, wow, okay, they're really, really good. They're very impressive. They're very well put together. They do a lot of things well. And overall, they play good. They play good basketball. Snyder is one of the best coaches in the NBA that we don't talk about. He has always been able to coach this team up. They've always been a very well coached team. Do a lot of the little things right, especially with a team like they've had the last few years, where you maybe were not the best team talent wise on the floor, but you were always able to stay in the game because of fundamentals. That's why that's why the Spurs, even with their lack of talent, are very competitive in most games because they do a lot of the little things right that keeps them in games. They don't beat themselves. They don't make mistakes. And so with that puts you in a position where, you'll always have a chance. And then if you do have the talent and you don't make mistakes, then you could take that next step. So the Jazz right now are looking really good. They're playing really good basketball. Salt Lake City probably feeling really good right now, knowing that, hey, after that great playoff series against the Nuggets last year where Donovan Mitchell really had a coming out party, it kind of makes you sit here as a Jazz fan and think, shoot, we might make it to the first round this year. We might actually be making noise. We might be able to compete with one of the LA teams. And that in and of itself is just progress, as usual. Because Utah's always been the team that has always been around, but they've never been seriously considered. And now, they may feel like, hey, with the team we have, maybe we can make some noise and make people turn some heads in the Western Conference. But that's all the time we have here for this segment. Coming up next, we're going to get some more NBA basketball news, so stay tuned right here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Last segment, we discussed Victor Oladipo saying that he was surprised, caught off guard, the Pacers traded him to the Houston Rockets. He was surprised. He wasn't expecting it. And they never gave him a heads up that it could happen. But it happened, and now he's in Houston. He's played very well in Houston, and they just came off a comeback victory tonight over the Portland Trailblazers. So that was a good win for them. But, he's played well. But like I said, we knew he wanted out. They didn't trade him this offseason, so maybe he was thinking, well, I'll just play with the team. We'll see what happens around the trade deadline. They traded him sooner than expected. So, I'm sure he's not mad about that at all. So we're just, I think he's all right with everything that's going on. Then we also talked about how good are the Utah Jazz, how good they are. Are they really as good as the record says right now? They are currently actually, and I made an incorrection, they're actually sitting at number 1 in the Western Conference right now. So, I mean, I don't think anybody thinks they're really a number 1 team, but definitely a good team. And then we also talk about the Houston Rockets. Can they make the playoffs? Like I said, coming off an impressive win, I think that there's definitely a chance they could make the playoffs as well. But now it's time to continue on into our other future up news. So if you remember last show, I discussed the Brooklyn Nets discussing a trade for JaVale McGee and Kevin Love. Now there are rumors that they could actually get another Cleveland player, but not by trade. Apparently, there's an expectation growing in Cleveland that Andre Drummond will be bought out by the Cleveland Cavaliers at some point, especially with all the big men they have. And there is a story he's starting to feel like he wants to move on. And so the Brooklyn Nets right now seem to be the favorite. They have already seemed to have made the connection that they would get Andre Drummond. I think that would be a huge move for the Brooklyn Nets to get a guy who can rebound like Andre Drummond. We know one of his biggest strengths is one of the best rebounders in the league. He's another guy you could put down there going against a team like Embiid's or, teams that have very quality big men to put him up against those guys. And then also Drummond, like I said, is great on the board, so he can get a lot of putbacks and dunks, especially with the kind of offense they're going to run. It's going to be a lot of 3 shots. So, and Drummond's going to be usually the only one down there rebounding. So and like I said, he's one of the best in the game at it. So I think this would be a great addition to the team. You know what I'm saying? I think this would make more sense than potentially getting a JaVale McGee. Because JaVale McGee is fine, but we all know you have to play JaVale McGee in spurts. You can't play JaVale McGee, 30 minutes. It has to be a spurt, 4 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 4 minutes here type of game for JaVale McGee. And then Kevin Love, I just feel like it wouldn't help from a defensive perspective. It wouldn't help with them playing defense, which is the weakness right now of their team. So I think getting an Andre Drummond, bringing him in, would do them wonders right now. I think it'll help them out in what they're trying to do, keep them, moving forward. And, listen, like I said, Brooklyn's team is still under construction. They're still trying to figure out who they want to be, what they're going to do, and how everything's going to work out. And with that, comes some, learning pains. We're going to have to figure out, okay, how we want to construct this team. And I think Andre Drummond, knowing that you'll probably have to only sign him to a veteran minimum as well, will probably be a very, very good pickup for them if they're able to get him and bring them in to, the team right now. So, if they're able to get Andre Drummond, I definitely think that is going to firmly help them. And then at that point, if I'm Brooklyn, if I'm looking at the rest of my team and how I can improve it, at that point, I'm looking maybe at a wing defender. Obviously, a wing defender would be very important for them to have moving forward because, it could be Bruce Brown. Some people think he's a good defender, but just maybe having another guy too would also be helpful because, like I said, they have some spots available. They have some flexibility, some trade exceptions, so they can potentially get some guys in there and really improve this team from the bottom up from there and really just continue to compete and play well moving forward and on to the future. So they have that to look forward to as well overall at the end of the day. Then we're going to get into conversation about Bradley Beal. Obviously, a lot of people have created hashtags, save Bradley Beal, rescue Bradley Beal. He actually set a record recently, or actually he set a record the other night. He is the first player to score 40 points in 10 straight games of when he scored 40 points and losing. So that's definitely not a record you want to be a part of. And even through all that, Bradley Beal still comes out and says that he wants to be a part of the team because he said, this is exactly why I want to be here. I want to change the fortunes of this franchise. I want this team to become a winning team. A lot of people may look at Bradley Beal and think you're crazy for that. But this is how he feels, and he wants to be a part of the Wizards organization and do that. And listen, he has played unbelievable. He has really showed himself to be a top-end player of the league. I mean, listen. At least every night he goes out there and going, hey, my team's not that good. I got to at least drop 30 plus, 40 plus just to have a chance. Now, of course, it could be a little deterring doing that on a nightly basis and never winning. Because if you just win every other night, it's like, or if you're in close games, you can sit here and say, okay, at least we're close. And some days we may be able to break through. But I also think what's also frustrating with the Bradley Beal situation and in Bradley Beal's situation is the fact that he is scoring these 44, 47, 50-point games, but still losing by 10, 20 points. Because that just basically means your team really didn't give you anything. And so on and so forth. But two teams that are currently interested in getting Bradley Beal's services are both the LA teams, the Clippers and the Lakers. We have heard that LeBron has been a big, big fan of Bradley Beal's for years. He's loved Bradley Beal. He loves the game of Bradley Beal. He's wanted Bradley Beal in the Lakers. The Clippers, they're probably looking at, if we added a guy like Bradley Beal, we would clearly become the favorites in the entire Western Conference and could even maybe potentially offset them needing a point guard. So both teams feel like if we get Bradley Beal, we will become a championship team. I mean, it's not like they already are. It's just in terms of that, we are definitely going to be a championship team. And so it's one of those things where you really can take advantage. You really can sit here and really go forward, really finesse, really take advantage and be great. And Bradley Beal, like I said, he's in a tough situation. Listen, some people may look at what Bradley Beal is doing and commend him, saying, "Hey, he's loyal. He's not someone who runs at the first sign of trouble." Even though we can say the Wizards have been bad for a minute, I mean, they really haven't been good since John Wall was healthy. Even though some people still feel like even that maybe wasn't good enough at that time for a guy like Bradley Beal, but he's always been a really good player, a guy who has improved his game, became the one option, had to have the team carry him, or he has to carry the team, and he's doing everything he can to get the Wizards to a victory year in and year out. Russell Westbrook has not been the investment that they thought he would be. It seems like they've actually done worse with him when he's actually played than when they actually haven't had him in the lineup. And I just think we'll have to see what happens. I mean, they are getting 3 guys back against the Hawks on Friday. So we'll see how they look in that game. But, we've seen this team fully healthy and they were losing too. So we don't know what's going to happen. There's a reason why Scott Brooks is on the hot seat, because the team is starting so bad. And I listen, it doesn't look good when you have 2 big name players on your team and you're the worst team in the Eastern Conference. That's just not a good look, regardless of how you put it, regardless of how you say it. It's just not a good look. And so, that's obviously something that's affected Scott Brooks, why they have not been as successful, and just how things have gone. It's just been tough for them. But they'll just continue to push on, and hopefully Bradley Beal won't suffer too much longer. And at the same time, as a team, if you're Washington, you may have to sit there and say to yourself, is it worth keeping Bradley Beal? Sometimes maybe we should move him just because we may need a complete reset. And we can get a lot back for him. And I'm sure that's something, if I'm in the Wizards front office, I would discuss. Because it's just one of those things where maybe keeping Bradley Beal isn't what's best for business. And if it's not best for business, you don't want to hurt your team by not making a move that maybe needs to be made. And that's the truth on that situation. So Bradley Beal probably going to be an all-star, clearly. So now you might feel like some people might give him votes out of pity, even though he's had the performance. He'll probably be an all-star. He'll probably be the leading scorer in the league this year. But outside of that, won't have a ton to show for it. And sometimes that can be the hardest pill to swallow. Overall, just not being able to find that success winning on the court, and that can always be difficult to, keep going with and transpire from at the end of the day. So it's just a matter of them just continuing to get better. If they continue to get better, they'll be good to go. But Bradley Beal needs to look somewhere else, and I think that when he does, listen, the fact that he has all these teams that want him, like I said, if you're the Wizards, you have to consider moving him because you got teams who are willing to give up a lot for him because they realize how important he could be to their championship success. And then maybe if you find a deal that maybe fits what you want, maybe potentially you can now, with whoever the new regime, especially if you do go ahead and fire Scott Brooks, you can go ahead into your new regime and say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to start with this, and we're going to go from here. And we feel like this is the best way for us to become successful. And then you become successful based off that, and then maybe Washington could become a relevant basketball team once again. So we're gonna have to see what happens with the Bradley Beal saga. Something that's gonna continue on for a minute now. We're just gonna have to keep an eye on that situation and see how everything turns out at the end of the day. But that's all the time we have here for this segment. Coming up next, we're gonna get into some more NBA news. So stay tuned on the GSMC Basketball Podcast for more basketball talk and discussion. We'll be right back after this break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we discussed, multiple topics like Andre Drummond going to the Nets. There's been some discussion there that if Andre Drummond gets bought out, he will go to Brooklyn and join KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. Also, the LA teams have an eye on Bradley Beal. They both would like to add Bradley Beal to their squads. Bradley Beal is like, we've seen what's happened with Bradley Beal. We've seen the situation. We've seen everything that has transpired with Bradley Beal. And so, obviously, they feel like adding Bradley Beal will make them the clear juggernaut favorites in the NBA if they were able to get him on their team. It's just a matter of the Wizards saying, are we going to give up Bradley Beal? Is it going to be the Wizards that say we're going to give up Bradley Beal? Or is it going to be the Bradley Beal say, let me go? But let's go ahead and get into some news. So if you remember a few weeks ago, well, actually a month ago, there was reports that there was a meeting within the Atlanta Hawks locker room about the way their playing style is running the offense to Trae. John Collins had spoken up and said that he thinks that they should run they should run an offense that includes everybody, not run it through Trae Young. And, they were like, okay, so there's some issues right now within the Atlanta Hawks locker room. Well, obviously a month has happened. The team, ever since going on that losing streak, has played better. They've played a tougher schedule, but they've played better. They're going against Washington on Friday. And Hawks Trae Young says that there is no beef despite everything that's happened. And everything of that sort in nature. So I'm going to read you an article by Blake Schuster on the Hawks and Trae Young saying this. And I quote, Trae Young says he and John Collins have no qualms with each other despite an early report citing a back and forth between teams, franchise player, and its starting forward. Sam Amick and Chris Krishner of The Athletic noted Collins and Young lit into each other during a film session earlier this month speaking to Yahoo Chris Haynes, Young denied the confrontation was any more than two players pushing each other to get better. Young said, and I quote to Chris Haynes, "Of course, if there's anything out there publicly, I always will go directly to that person. As for the John incident, me and him talked about it as soon as we got out the next day, and we were both confused. It just got out, and it was all over a regular film session. So there's no beef or anything in there to begin with. There hasn't been any locker room issues on my side. Anything that people were saying about locker room issues, there hasn't been one. It's been all about our team and how we've been trying to get better in film sessions." Here's how The Athletic described this disagreement, and I quote, "John Collins, the fourth-year big man who just weeks away bet on himself in a big way during his failed extension talks with the Hawks, shared his unfiltered and unhappy views about the way franchise centerpiece Trae Young was running the offense. According to three sources who were either in the session or had knowledge of the session of what was said, Collins raised several issues about the way the Hawks were functioning with Young at the helm. There was no back and forth between the two, but the pointed criticism caught the eye of the room, and Young, sources say, made it clear to others that he strongly disagreed with Collins' assessment. Now, the Hawks are currently 9-9, sitting atop the Southeastern Division and starting to look like a dark horse contender in the Eastern Conference thanks to the likes of Young, Collins, and center Clint Capella. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be more growing pains. This is a young team, just starting to figure out how to succeed in the NBA. Does it happen without some conflict or disagreement? Young wants it to be known that those comments are all in the name of improvement. The stakes have been raised in Atlanta. Now it's on the team to live up to them. And I quote, "Making the playoffs is the main goal," Young said. Young said, "For us these past couple of years, it's been more of a development stage. We're all pretty young, and of course we're trying to win each and every night, but everyone's main focus was to get better each and every day. And when you're hearing that all the time, that's really the main focus. So now it's like, how can we win each and every day? It's a different mindset around here now." And so that pretty much, just says, the beef between John Collins and Trae Young is non-existent. And it wouldn't be too difficult or wouldn't be bad, on how everything was going. And then let me read this other story to you about Lonzo Ball responding to trade rumors. How David Griffin discusses how Lonzo Ball is traded to trade rumors, also by Blake Schuster. And I quote, "The New Orleans Pelicans' slow start this season has rivals wondering if they could trade for point guard Lonzo Ball. The Pelicans haven't shied away from that notion either." Pelicans Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations, David Griffin, explained as much when talking to reporters about the Ball situation. And this is what he said on ESPN Radio in New Orleans. And this is what he said. "It's times like these, the fact that we're trying to build a culture around family really matters. We want to love each other enough to tell each other what we need to hear. That means you have to be honest with your players at all times. I think our players trust us enough and trust this place enough to know that's the case. That we will tell them the truth. The truth is, when you're 6-10 and struggling to finish off games and disappointed in your results, teams are going to recognize that and they're going to show interest in the players that they covet. This just comes with the territory. I think to varying degrees, different players handle these things differently. Throughout my career, I've had to sit down with guys at times like this, and I think you saw Lonzo Ball come out in the first half prior to turning the ankle, and he had one of his best halves of the year. I think he realized he's compartmentalized in his situation. It's a good thing that people bring up your name because it means you're coveted by other teams. I think you have to take that as a positive and understand how the business works. It's quite often acquiring teams will throw your name out there and hope that there's blood in the water. This is just how it goes when your results are not meeting your expectations." Continuing on with the article. Ball played 15 minutes in the 124-106 victory over the Washington Wizards, posting 9 points, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 2 rebounds. The fourth-year guard was making smart entry passes and keeping the ball moving, albeit against the worst defense in the league. Ball is considered questionable to play Friday against the Milwaukee Bucks. That doesn't mean the Pelicans are getting ready to move him just yet. As Griffin noted, honesty and transparency will remain key pillars of the organization's rebuild. New Orleans would be foolish not to hear out trade offers from other teams. That means Ball's name will keep coming up ahead of the trade deadline. Per Shams Charania of the Athletic, and I quote, that New Orleans has been receiving calls about the availability of Lonzo Ball and J.J. Redick. It has showed an openness to discuss trades around both interested teams. Sources tell The Athletic a move would create a clear path for young guards Nickeil Walker, Alexander Walker, and Kira Lewis in the Pelicans' rotation. Ball is averaging 11.8 points, 4.6 assists, and 3.6 rebounds per game through 13 games. It makes sense that contenders would look and try to buy low on a potential depth player who can handle plenty of minutes on a championship team. Griffin likes how Ball has responded to those talks so far, and it just remains to be seen whether he is convincing the team whether to keep him or move him. And so that's what's going on right now of everything. And as you can tell, it's a pretty crazy time in Pelican land. As I said, just want to add on to what I was talking about in the first segment about what's happening with the entire Pelican situation. But now we have to look into the 76ers, as that's the last thing I'm going to talk about here. 76ers. Are they the best? Or should they be the favorite in the Eastern Conference? Should they be the team that everybody looks at and says, we have to beat the Sixers? We saw against the Lakers, they beat one of the best teams, unless they did let up that lead late. But a lot of that game, you saw they were able to really take advantage. Even though Anthony Davis is struggling, they were able to take advantage. Embiid is a beast. He whipped Marc Gasol and Anthony Davis. Because I think one thing I watched when I watched the 76er Laker game was, I truly believe that the Sixers can match up with the Lakers the best because of Embiid, they can match up inside, and because of Ben Simmons, they can match up on LeBron. Not saying that they're going to stop him. That's not what I'm saying, but they have better matchups. Ben Simmons is, like I said, one of the few players who's big enough in terms of just size and height against LeBron. LeBron can't just simply, he's a smaller guy. It's like, listen, now LeBron's stronger, so he can still overpower Ben, but it's going to be a tougher overpower because he's not a 5'6" guy trying to guard you. He's 6'10" guarding you at 6'9". Like, you legitimately have to go up against this man and pound a little bit. And then if Danny Green continues to shoot the way he's been shooting, there's no reason why I don't think they could even beat a team like Brooklyn. Now, clearly the key, everybody says, and I think it's the truth, the key is going to be Ben Simmons and his development with his jump shot. Because it is hard to believe if he does not develop a jump shot, they can end up winning because the playoffs is when stuff slows down. Ben may be able to get 13, 14 points now in the regular season. But remember, he's put up 1-point duds in the playoffs. And that's what you don't need if you're the 76ers. You don't need him putting up that type of pointage because that's going to put more pressure on the rest of the supporting cast like Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, Danny Green, Seth Curry, all of them to basically make up for that. And I'm sure you don't want to do that intentionally and put that kind of pressure on him or on that pressure on the rest of the team. So, obviously, depending on what Ben decides to do in his development coming forward, that's going to be important. That's going to be big for the 76ers. They're probably the biggest wild card team to me in terms of just, they're the team that's good enough to win it all, but it feels like they have to become and evolve into a certain team to actually end up winning it all. And all of it's going to hinge on the hopes of Ben Simmons. So we're going to have to see if they're going to be able to pull it off or they're going to be able to, get the job done. So it's going to be really, like I said, interesting to kind of see how everything works out. it's going to be interesting to see how everything, ends up. And we're just going to have to hope for the best at the end of the day for the 76ers, as they're going to be a team that's going to be in it at the end. And we'll know if they're going to be truly, truly, truly good enough to, be actually able to compete at a high level on a day in and day out basis. So we're going to have to see. But that's all the time we had here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you for tuning in for my last show here at GSMC. Please don't forget to listen to the other amazing podcasts here at the GSMC Podcast Network. Like I said, thank you for letting me be part of this experience, letting me be a part of your lives. For anybody who's listened to me in all my episodes throughout the past year, this is your host Brice signing out, saying have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.